and welcome to the Your Food Matters podcast. I'm Dr. Sue Kleiner. I'm here with my wonderful friend and colleague, Erik Bustillo.
Hello, hello.
And we are happy to be here today talking about a really hot topic that both Erik and I get a lot, which are all the various greens powdered supplements. They have various names. We can be talking about those, but in general, it's the powdered greens, kind of the concept that people think of. I can replace the fruits and vegetables in my diet by drinking this powdered drink. And so if you enjoy our podcast today, please tell your friends. You can find us not only on the Move Nutrition Network right now, but also on Spotify, on Rumble, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. You can watch us and see us talking as well as listen to us. So that's our topic, just because it's a question that we get asked a lot.
Yeah, it's actually been quite interesting to see how popular they have gotten. So I get asked about these things. I teach a workshop at least every other week, and it's a lot of like military individuals and that kind of thing. And I get asked this question every single time. I get asked about greens powders. I get asked about reds powders also, which is a little bit newer compared to the green one. And it sounds like a dream come true, right? I mean, you don't have to eat the vegetable. Just take this powdered supplement and you're good to go. So most definitely I want to jump on that, right? It's easier.
You know, and if you just look at the ingredients, you can say, well, it's basically a vitamin mineral supplement. If you don't like pills and you want to be taking a vitamin mineral supplement, and this is your substitute for that work. Doesn't mean that it actually does something for you. That's a whole different question. But as far as the convenience factor, if you are looking to take a kind of a daily or one a day supplement and you prefer a powder, that's great. You can use this. The flip side of that is they have flavor. You have to drink a whole glass of something, and they're not always that yummy.
Yeah, speaking of flavor, I've yet to try one that I enjoyed the taste of it. I typically find myself having to kind of hold my breath to take it in. So yeah, the flavors, it's questionable for me.
And the reviews reflect that. So they're all over the place. Some people who say, well, I drown out the flavor by having so many other ingredients in my smoothie. And then that's when I think, well, why do you need the greens? But the powder, because they're using so much good stuff in their smoothie, they probably don't need to be spending on the powder, except for some sense of insurance, the same reason that people take a vitamin mineral supplement. It's sort of that one a day idea. But we'd like to get into the sort of the heart of all of this and talk about pros and cons, real ingredients, what data we have or we don't have, and what usefulness or not there may be.
For sure. I think that question comes up a lot oftentimes amongst practitioners is what data do we actually have on these powdered supplements? Because I see it the exact same way. I don't see it as something bad, but I see it as just a powdered multivitamin, multi-mineral kind of supplement, if you will. But what kind of data really does exist as far as showing or proving that they can kind of back up different claims? Because you do hear some claims about these powders also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So down to the nitty gritty, number of active ingredients. So it's a huge range, starting and just to call out brands because they're out there and they're advertising themselves. We're not trying to be secretive about that. We want to give you the information where the rubber meets the road. So,
Definitely.
starting with the vital protein greens, 8 active ingredients. Amazing Grass has 25 active ingredients. Athletic Greens has 75. And so Athletic Greens really like calls that out as their claim to fame. Does that matter? Kind of like that movie Spinal Tap, where, well, if you turn the knob to 11, that it's actually, is it really louder? No, there's just more numbers on the dial. So um, that's, if you haven't seen Spinal Tap, you need to see it. Have you seen it, Erik?
I haven't. I haven't watched Spinal Tap.
Oh my gosh, you've got to see it. It's hilarious. Well, the concept is that there's one speaker that the volume dial goes to 11, and all the other speakers, the dials go to 10. But there's just more hashes on, more numbers. It doesn't get louder. You just have the loudest of volume is the loudest that's there, period. But it just has this appearance that it's louder because it's dials up to 11, that many hashes on the dial versus 10. Anyway.
Yeah, instead of just stopping at 10. Also, just for the record, I've also not watched Titanic. There's plenty of movies that I have.
Spinal Tap is a not to be missed. But anyway. So the number of ingredients don't necessarily call it out as a better product. It may make it more expensive, but perhaps not necessarily better. And in fact, the Athletic Greens is the most expensive of the products, and can range anywhere from about $2.50 to $3.50 per serving. The others are less. So the pros, thinking in pros and cons, we said, well, it's kind of another way to get a vitamin mineral supplement in. It's convenient. The other stuff that's added, probiotics, some fiber, some freeze-dried produce, how much of that can actually be in there? Well, that's what we don't know, because once you get past the vitamins and minerals, they kind of lump all of these other ingredients together as proprietary formulas, and so you have no idea how much of anything is in there. So is it just, I always say, like pixie dust that they have, blown over the top of the container, or is there anything really in there? We just don't know, and we have no way to know. And I know, Erik, you and I have talked about that we don't like when a product says proprietary formula.
Yeah, because a big part of it, and I think an easy way for people to kind of see that on the label is that it won't actually say exactly how much is in there. So it'll either say proprietary blend, or it'll just have like a bunch of things kind of mixed in, where if you look at how much vitamin C, it'll say that it has specifically 500 milligrams. But those proprietary blends, it's like a mixed bag of, you don't know how much of one thing you're getting compared to another thing,
Right.
which is unfortunate, because obviously if you're a practitioner recommending something to someone, well, we want to make sure that people know exactly what it is that they're getting. And those proprietary blends get a little bit tricky sometime, and I think truth in labeling and transparency is very important for us as practitioners.
Yeah, and what's so interesting to me is that I'm going to skip ahead to the con side, is that in the ISSN position stand on supplements for athletic performance, there's 5 or 6 supplements called out that are efficacious, meaning they have research data behind them to show that they enhance athletic performance and are useful. Things like creatine and protein and carbohydrate and electrolyte fluid drinks, those sorts of things. Iron, vitamin D. And so in these greens, the funny thing is, especially for a female athlete, there's no iron. There's almost no calcium, very low calcium levels. and no vitamin D. So the things that we know actually make a difference aren't in there. And I find that fascinating, just as
Yeah.
a place to start.
Now, I will say, not that I'm particularly in favor or against. In their defense, I guess
Yeah,
it's a green supplement. So I guess, and now of course I don't think the consumer is going to think about this. I think me as a dietitian, I kind of think I'm like, well, I mean, how much vitamin D is in a greens,
true,
supplement or like in a
true.
greens food? I'm sorry, or something like that. And maybe there are other things that we could consider, like maybe iron, like in dark leafy greens and those sorts of things. But then, can you have that in there if you're going to be marketing it to men? Should men be taking
Right,
iron?
right.
It just turns into this thing. But yeah, to your point, the things that we know work well, are they even included in this particular powder or supplement?
Right. And I guess, if you say, well, in defense, it's a green, yes, but then people are thinking of it instead of their vitamin mineral supplement. And that's the number one thing they say. Market it as an easy way to boost your intake of important vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds. And so if if it doesn't have the clearly the vitamins and minerals that we have data on that are really missing in people's diets, that's kind of interesting. Another sort of to give them due, there are those that are starting to have NSF for sport certification or other third party laboratory certifications as drug-free and contaminant-free. And so that is also critically important in a product that is this mixed ingredient powdered product or any product. For me, I don't like to take anything that isn't laboratory certified by a third party independent lab. And so I want to know that there's nothing in the product that's not on the label, and everything that's on the label is actually in the product. And you have no guarantee of that unless you've got that third party certification.
Yeah, and those third parties, they're extremely helpful because to make a recommendation about a supplement, I find so much more comfort in either teaching a patient, a client, an athlete, an everyday just exerciser, whoever it might be. Like, hey, look for these. I call them stamps of approval of mine. That it has the informed choice or informed sport stamp of approval, the NSF one as well. Especially as we start talking with athletes who compete in tested sport. Are you getting tested by the World or U.S. Anti-Doping Agency and those sorts of things? But even just as a consumer, I think, Sue, to your point, we want to make sure that what we're taking is actually what is on the label. We don't want any kind of funny business with the things that we're taking. Which brings up an interesting point about a very common myth that the supplement industry is not regulated by the FDA. And I think contrary to lots of people's belief, it is quite well regulated, not as regulated as medicines and whatnot, but it is regulated. That being said, these third parties also exist for a reason, because I know, like Informed Choice, they're going to test down to like the smallest possible particle to ensure that there's not this X banned substance or anything like that. So it can get kind of tricky if we don't see those stamps of approval.
Right, for sure. And then the thing that I really don't like about these products is the claim that they're going to enhance digestion. So some of them have probiotics added. Again, we don't really know what those do. There's lots of claims about probiotics, but the movement is kind of away from a daily probiotic, and that probiotics should be specifically mission driven when you take them, kind of like you take a drug to treat something or to have some kind of specific outcome, and not for general healthy digestion. What we do know now, and we've talked about, is the concept of prebiotics or dietary fiber, and how important that is to feed the healthy cultures in your gut and maintain balance in your microbiome, your gut microbiome, that those are critically important to promote healthy digestion. So they say they're added, but the thing is, in a serving, almost every one of these products that I've ever looked at have 1 to 2 grams of fiber. So for $3 or nearly $4 in some cases worth of produce, if you were actually eating, celery and carrots and broccoli, and you had a $4 serving that you bought at the grocery store, you'd probably have closer to 5 to 6 grams of fiber. And so, number one, I think it is misdirection to say we're giving you all this stuff that's going to help your gut, and then it definitely does not meet what we talk about as the qualifications for enhancing digestive health.
Yeah, that's definitely something for people to think about, because am I getting as much bang for my buck by taking this supplement as I can be with food? And I think oftentimes, and I don't know how you feel about this, but oftentimes I think the assumption, and I do think that most of the time it's true, is that we maybe get more bang for our buck with a combination of things. Like, you can get a multivitamin that isn't overly expensive and focus on dietary changes, and then
Yes.
right there you're getting a pretty good bang for your buck. It does get a little bit difficult to recommend a supplement. Also depends on the population, but to recommend a supplement that is going to cost somewhere between, oh gosh, I forget the exact price, but between like 80 and 100 and something dollars,
Right.
like a month or something like
exactly. That's it.
that. And that's pretty pricey, on top of the fact that, hey, you have to eat your food, taking this as well. And of course, if people can afford it, then, by all means, I support that for sure. But I also support making healthy dietary changes, making changes to our habits to ensure that we're getting a good variety in our nutrition.
And as you said, I get that everyone isn't going to eat all their servings of plant-rich foods, fruits and vegetables, grains and beans, nuts and seeds. Everyone's not going to get that in. This is greens. They're not talking about nuts and seeds and grains. This is greens, but even with greens, the promise of digestive health, I think, is bogus. Number one. Number two, they have no data to support it. There's no research. And if you read the reviews of customers, the numbers of people that complain of an upset stomach, diarrhea, and bloating is kind of astounding. So, and why might they have that? Well, there are some fibers added. Inulin is in this in particular. That is one that people who follow the FODMAPs diet know that they need to watch out for inulin. And so maybe that's causing a problem, and if people aren't used to having fiber in their diet at all, and now they've added, 1 to 2 grams really isn't going to do that in general, unless you really have a sensitivity to inulin in particular.
Mm-hmm. And those people are out there for sure.
Oh yeah, they're definitely out there. But it is interesting that really go in and read the customer reviews. This may not be the choice you want. However, like I said, if you're not sucked into a false sense of security, but you're using this in combination as your sort of daily vitamin mineral supplement, understanding that you're not getting iron, calcium, and vitamin D, and that you are also eating a plant-rich diet, then go for it. I don't think there's that much in here, and I don't think it's worth it, frankly. And the claims of the proprietary ingredients, the proprietary formula is really what they're banking on when they make these claims. It's that blend, because otherwise people would just take a vitamin pill. But that's the side of the equation that doesn't balance out for me.
Yeah, and I think that this maybe I'm gonna put on my conspiracy hat really quick. Maybe these companies are in together with like Pepto Bismol and Alka Seltzer to. uh, just kidding, just kidding. Um, but I do think that there, and I've worked with these people before. As much as I like to think that food first is the best approach, I think that it's one approach. I don't think everything always has to be food first.
Right?
And there's definitely a time and place for supplements. And again, if an individual can afford it, right? Because there are many things that impact whether or not someone should take a supplement, like costs. I think that I know that there are some interesting claims that companies will make, and understandably so, right? Because are they a supplement company or are they a marketing company? I mean, I don't know.
Right, right.
But and this is not a knock on supplement companies. I'm definitely pro supplement, but I think that as far as claims go, obviously from what you're saying, not too much to support, at least as far as evidence goes in the science space, not too much to support certain claims, whether it's to support digestion. In some cases, it might work against that. And then things like immune system and immunity and all of that obviously boost your immunity, post pandemic, if we want to call it that. It's like, yeah, we're going to talk about immune health and all of it. So it's on people's radar for sure. But I do feel that there's certainly a time and place for people, because I'm sure you've had many of these. I've had many of them. The people who simply absolutely refuse to have any sort of vegetable. Fruits they're okay with, but vegetables they won't do. And definitely there's ways to try to incorporate more vegetables into their diet in some way, shape, or form. But some people just absolutely will not, and to the death, believe that they cannot eat these foods. So then it's kind of like, well, if you're able to afford something like this, then in my opinion, it becomes an option to at least consider. Of course, there are many other ways that we could go around that, but thinking about their schedules and travel and whatever else it might be, what might come easier for them. So there's this like give and take when it comes to these greens powders.
Yeah, I mean, your idea, of the client who doesn't eat vegetables, it totally reminds me of I worked with a extremely well-known NBA player a number of years ago who will remain unnamed, HIPAA laws, etc.
For sure.
And he was 100% not going to eat vegetables. Like, it was out of the question. And that's when, and this is a number of years ago, I designed a bunch of smoothie recipes for him that hid the vegetables by putting, a lot of fruit in there. And you can disguise vegetables, and he was actually getting the whole vegetable in there versus powder. And that's probably, what you think of starting with Soylent Green. It was kind of the idea, well, can we just not eat it all? Or can we disguise some of, make things much more convenient to eat? And he did very well. He had no idea what was in those smoothies.
That's
now,
awesome.
That the thing is, he wasn't making them for himself, right? Clients that have to make them for themselves, well, you got to convince
story.
them to try it. But yeah, I mean, clients run the gamut, and in the end, it is using our entire toolkit to get them to the behaviors that we know will promote their best health. Using products is nothing that I'm against at all, and anybody who knows me knows I have used supplements and products forever, always seeking the best ones out there.
For sure. Same
My
here.
concern, just like when you're at conferences, also when I'm speaking, the people asking, the coaches and the trainers, can my athletes use this, or I have my athletes using this instead of eating, and 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 I just feel that there's a false sense of security that's being passed around, and honestly, the companies, they're not doing anything wrong in their marketing. They are right on their structure function claims, right? Boost immunity, boost digestive health. If you eat food, you do that. And so these, you get in calories, carbs, protein, and vitamins, and you're going to be boosting all these different areas. They're not making inappropriate claims, but there's a certain intimation. It's got mushrooms in it. It's got various factors that have their own marketing campaigns around those ingredients, and the consumer starts the story themselves, right? And influencers, they do a whole lot to mess up the storyline in
Ugh,
favor of sales. And so
don't get me started.
I know. So overall, I think, are greens powders worth it? If you're using it as knowing the vitamins and minerals that are in there and using it as your sort of substitute or your insurance policy of a daily vitamin mineral supplement, I think that's worth it. Are they a substitute for whole fruits and vegetables? No, just no. You look at the amount that's in there. There's not enough. If you would dehydrate and powder, a whole bunch of kale, it would weigh more than what's in that powder that you're using, the couple of tablespoons or whatever. And they're saying there's a ton of stuff in there, not just kale. So and there's no research to back that up, that you actually can substitute. And is it okay to drink every day, which is another big question that I get. You need to look at your own health and medications that you take. These products can interact with medications. It's very important to check that no matter what supplement you use. Are there interactions with any medications that you take? And including birth control and other things that we think of as just kind of, we don't even think of as medication anymore. And I think hormonal birth control, oral birth control, in particular, is one of those that falls off the radar. And there are lots of products that interfere with birth control methods. So be wise, and you really need to do some homework. And this information is easily searchable. And as our Vietnam friends say, on Uncle Google.
For sure. And working with, your friendly neighborhood dietitian,
Yes.
could be beneficial. And I think you drove home a really important point of just it kind of depends, right? It's all going to depend on the individual, their specific case. There's no one size fits all to anything, including with greens powders.
Yeah, for sure. And if you would like to have recipes for various shakes, certainly I have a ton of them published in my books, in the New Power Eating, in the Good Mood Diet.
Those are excellent resources.
Yeah, and there's lots of wonderful resources for excellent smoothies that are good as pre or post exercise replenishments, and certainly good healthy snacks throughout the day. Don't have this conversation turn you off from doing those things. And I have to say, most of the people that I talk with actually use these greens powders in an otherwise really nutrient rich smoothie typically. And so, I say, why add the powder? Just put in some greens. And you can by the way, you can use frozen greens. They are
Definitely.
very rich in nutrition. Frozen produce, frozen fruits and vegetables are frozen practically in the field. They are very high in nutrient content, maintain their nutrient content, certainly better than produce lying at the bottom of your vegetable drawer a week later. You're better off with frozen. So don't forget about using frozen produce in your smoothies.
I'm so glad you said that too, because a lot of times there's that misconception that it has to be fresh or raw or whatever else, and it's like, well, frozen is a good option. It longer shelf life, so to speak, or freezer
Right.
life, and it was frozen at the height of its nutrient content, so it's definitely an excellent option.
Excellent. Yes, totally. Oh, that's a good one to end on.
Yes, good talk today.
Good talk, Eric. This was fun. And if people know how to contact us, please do. If you're starting to have questions that you'd love for us to talk about, we'd love to talk about them with you. So you can probably write into Move Nutrition Network, or you can find me on my website, which is drsKleiner.com, DRSKLEINER.com, or I'm on Instagram at Power Eat, on Facebook, Dr. Susan Kleiner. Eric, where can we find you?
I'm at Erik Bustillo, ErikBustiioo. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Instagram is probably the best bet. But yeah, you can find me on there.
Fabulous. Well, until next time, remember that your food really does matter.
Amen to that.
And we'll talk soon. Bye, Eric.
Bye. Thanks, Sue.